Joining us now, a member of Israel's Knesset, Daniel Illouz. He is also live in Tel Aviv. Thank you and welcome. I'd like to begin with what that woman just said, that any price should be paid for the hostages. How do you receive that message from her, who she is a teacher of one of the hostages?
Hi, and thank you for your question. I have to say that even though I can understand and identify definitely with her feelings, this cannot be the position of a responsible government. We need to ensure that the nation of Israel and the state of Israel will be able to flourish, survive, and continue surviving after this war. We understand that Hamas, after what it did on October 7th and revealed really its face of evil, has to be defeated, has to be destroyed, and it's an existential need for us as Israelis to do that. And so we're willing to pay a very high price. We're willing to do a lot of things in order to release the soldiers, but it wouldn't be right to say any price should be paid. It needs to be done in a responsible way that both ensures the release of the hostages, but also secures Israel's future.
Secretary Blinken of the U.S. is in the region right now in the Middle East talking with Saudi officials. He'll make several stops along the way, and one of his priorities is to engage on the discussions to release the hostages. I know there is not specific details you can share, but how do the talks stand on bringing the hostages home, 130 of them, and a possible ceasefire deal?
So I have to say, as I said before, Israel is willing to pay a heavy price. It's willing to compromise. It's willing to do a lot of things. Right now, Hamas is not budging. And we understand here in Israel that the only way to get Hamas to budge and to agree to terms that will enable the release of hostages is if we keep military pressure strong on Hamas, because their only interest is to try and lower our military pressure. And as long as we keep military pressure strong, then we might end up getting to a deal. This is what happened in the first deal that released half of the hostages that were taken by Hamas in the beginning of this war, and we believe that this is what will happen again. And that's why we're keeping military pressure very strong in order to ensure that our hostages will be released.
Politics gets in the way of so many things, and war included. There is some new backlash after an Israeli minister had some criticism for President Biden. They said, instead of giving us full backing, Biden is busy giving humanitarian aid and fuel to Gaza, which goes to Hamas. If Trump was in power, he went on to say, the U.S. conduct would be completely different. What do you make of those comments?
I have to say, I think it's really not our place as Israelis to tell Americans who should be in power and who shouldn't be in power. We have to be grateful for the support that we get and for the true alliance. America and Israel are really true allies, and it's crossed party lines. And I think that those comments by a minister were misplaced. I think it's good that the prime minister also made it clear that those comments do not represent his own thoughts. America is a democracy. It can choose whoever its president will be. And I'm confident that whoever the president of America is, America and Israel will stay very strong allies.
Meantime, the U.S. has struck back in the Red Sea against Iran's proxies. What impact is that having on the war effort in Gaza?
At this point, Israel is laser focused on Gaza, and we see that there are also other fronts that are definitely active, some active with the Israeli Defense Forces, such as our northern border, and others with some of our allies that are also attacking some of the Iranian proxies, including the Houthis in Yemen and, of course, the militias in Iraq. And we definitely see this as a clear sign that there is an understanding in the whole West that this scenario where Iran builds militias all around the world in order to attack different allies of the Western world is not something that can keep going on. And it's a clear message not only to those militias themselves, but also to Iran that it needs to stop acting in this way.
We'll see if the strikes do anything to deter these militant groups in the Red Sea and across the Middle East. Daniel Illouz, you're always generous with your time. Nice to see you again, sir. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.